Following their victory in southern Gondor against the Haradrim invaders, the lands of Ithilien suffered increasing Orc and Uruk-hai attacks, prompting the steward Turin II to withdraw his people from the region in 2901 TA, leaving only scouts and warriors to watch over Mordor from the outpost of Henneth Anun. Further north in the lands of Erebor, tragedy once again struck in 2911 when a harsh, fell winter wrought havoc upon the hobbits of the Shire. Though not as bad as the Long Winter nearly 2 centuries prior, it nonetheless threatened mass devastation when an army of White Wolves invaded by crossing over the frozen Brandywine River, forcing the hobbits to sound the Horn of Buckland, calling their people to take up arms and defend their homeland. Further damage was then inflicted upon Erebor when the Fell Winter ended in 2912, as the melting ice and snow led local rivers to flood, leaving the city of Tharbad in ruins while its human population fled. Originally founded by the men of Numenor in the Second Age, the Dunedain population gradually diminished until replaced by the Dunlendings, who migrated from the south for settlements like Tharbad and Bree. Though he continued to operate in the shadows almost 3,000 years after his defeat in the War of the Last Alliance, the Dark Lord Sauron was nearly ready to launch a second, large-scale invasion for the conquest of Middle-earth. Despite numerous setbacks, like the defeat of the orcs in the Misty Mountains, his armies were vast and growing stronger by the day, with thousands of orcs bred in Mordor, in addition to his servants and allies from the east and south. Yet in order to secure his stranglehold over the continent, Sauron still had 2 major objectives he needed to accomplish. The first was to restore his personal strength by finding the One Ring of Power, and the second was to destroy the Dunedain kingdom of Gondor, thereby eliminating the most significant military threat to his forces. Standing in opposition to the Dark Lord was the wizard Gandalf the Grey, who, in the absence of Saruman's leadership, took on the role of general and master strategist for the free peoples of Middle-earth. Where Sauron had the loyalty of Mordor, Dol Guldur, the remaining orcs of the Misty Mountains, the Easterlings, the Haradrim of the South, the Corsairs of Umbar, and the Variags of Khand, the peoples of the West could primarily rely on support from the human kingdoms of Gondor and Rohan, the elves of the Woodland Realm, Lothlorien and Rivendell, the dwarves of the Iron Hills and Erebor, and the humans of Dale, who were allied with the dwarves. Unfortunately, a large portion of their northern defenses were eliminated in 2770 when the dragon Smaug the Terrible destroyed the city of Dale and occupied the kingdom under the mountain. Realizing Smaug, who descended from a species which served the first Dark Lord, Morgoth, had the potential to become a devastating ally to the second Dark Lord, Gandalf convinced the dwarven exile Thorin Oakenshield and his 12 companions to reclaim Erebor and eliminate the dragon in 2941. With the help of the Hobbit Bilbo Baggins, the company of dwarves entered the Lonely Mountain but were unable to subdue the dragon, causing him to depart and unleash his fury on the nearby human settlement of Laketown. Learning about an unprotected bare patch on the dragon's chest, Bard the Bowman, a descendant of the last Lord of Dale, shot a powerful black arrow directly into his weak spot and killed the dragon Smaug, instantly becoming a hero and leader to his people. Having lost their town and suffered greatly due to the beast unleashed by the dwarves, Bard planned to lead his people to the Lonely Mountain, where they might seek recompense from a portion of Erebor's treasure hoard. The humans were then joined by King Thranduil and an army of elves from Mirkwood, who thought the dwarves were dead and so wanted to claim the treasure for themselves. Upon seeing the plight of Bard and the townsfolk, the elves aided them with supplies and temporary shelters before descending upon the Lonely Mountain together. Finding the entrance blocked and dwarven company still alive, Bard attempted to negotiate, but Thorin refused after seeing they arrived armed and with elves who had no rightful claim to their wealth. Unwilling to leave empty-handed, Thranduil and Bard laid siege to the Mountain Kingdom until the Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, arrived with the Arkenstone, the most precious jewel of the dwarves and an heirloom of their royal line. Seeking to avoid bloodshed, Bilbo left his dwarven companions and made off with the Arkenstone, giving it to the opposing army so they might trade it for a share of the treasure. Though Thorin was furious, he ultimately agreed to hand over 1/14 of their wealth in exchange for the jewel. Yet before the deal was completed, Thorin's cousin Dain Ironfoot arrived, in response to a message sent by Raven, leading an army of 500 battle-hardened dwarves from the Iron Hills. Seeing their kinsmen under siege, Dain Ironfoot and his forces would have engaged the humans and elves in a bloody struggle, if not for Gandalf, who came between them and revealed that a greater enemy was on its way. Seeking to capitalize on the death of Smaug and claim the dwarven treasure, Bolg, son of Azog the Defiler, led an army of orcs, wolves, wargs, and bats to destroy anyone who stood in their way. Agreeing to cease hostilities and focus on the larger threat, the Battle of Five Armies erupted, with humans, elves, and dwarves on one side, while orcs and wicked beasts fought in opposition. Though Bolg's forces soon had the advantage, they were ultimately defeated when the Great Eagles of the Misty Mountains, along with the Skin Changer Bjorn, arrived to reinforce the Free Peoples. Suffering a devastating defeat, Bolg was killed by Bjorn, while his orc armies lost roughly 3 parts of their total forces. Despite emerging victorious, the elves, humans, and dwarves also suffered many casualties, including the deaths of King Thorin, as well as his nephews Fili and Kili. In the aftermath of battle, the Arkenstone was returned to the dwarves, now under the rule of King Dain Ironfoot, while Bilbo forfeited his share of the treasure, giving it to Bard the Bowman, who in turn divided it amongst his own people and the elves. With Lake Town destroyed, the humans used their newly acquired funds to rebuild the city of Dale, completing construction in 2944. As for Bilbo Baggins, Dain Ironfoot insisted he leave with a rich reward, but he declined such largesse, instead departing with only 2 chests of gold and silver. Yet this was not the only prize the Hobbit carried home, as he discovered a magic ring in the lair of the creature Gollum, while separated from the company of Thorin Oakenshield in the Misty Mountains. Although Gandalf was aware his small friend possessed this treasure, neither one truly understood its significance, as this was the One Ring of Power, forged by Sauron in Mount Doom. In addition to Bilbo's discovery of the One Ring, the death of Smaug, restoration of Erebor, and Battle of the Five Armies, the year 2941 also saw another important event unfold, when the White Council finally moved against Dol Guldur to confront Sauron, causing him to retreat back to Mordor. Yet the Dark Lord was unwilling to give up this strategic location, and so sent 3 of his Nazgul a decade later to reclaim Dol Guldur. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Sir Joe Wartfoot of the North, the Emperor of Mankind, Elendil of Numenor, and the Dragon Princess. If you'd like to help the channel, you can sign up for membership through the YouTube Join button, buy merchandise from the store page, or go to patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can get early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the members and Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.